All right, welcome back, Admin Mastermind and Teach Better Family. We are just ending a session, which was phenomenal. As always, we've had a great group of administrators just collaborating together, working through a variety of different topics. Chad, before we jumped on, I was looking at the notes and just realized that we hit a lot of topics this morning and not a long time.
Yeah, we absolutely did. We covered quite a bit. It's all loosely connected,
Yeah.
especially from an instructional lens, but we covered a lot. But I hope we solved a lot of problems too, because that's what we're here for, right?
Yes. Well, it all started because one of our administrators talked about co-teaching, and that's something that we've created a course for. I know that it's something that's become more and more popular on campuses and in districts. So, Chad, do you want to kind of set the stage as to what was brought up and how we started the conversation in regards to co-teaching?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that was brought up was just the challenge of getting co-teachers to collaborate effectively. This is actually one of the reasons why we created the course on Teach Better Academy, and we now offer PD on co-teaching for schools and districts, because a lot of times we have the idea of if we put two adults in the room, students will improve their performance. It's like this, we think that one thing automatically leads to the other. However, if this is not done effectively, we end up getting no result or no additional growth because the adults aren't fully functioning as a team. And so, one of the things I think every school needs to have as a mindset is every adult, every kid, every day. So, like, if there's an adult in the room, right, they need to be doing whatever they can to improve learning outcomes for kids. And a lot of times, I think we have one main kind of character in the classroom that's the teacher, and then another character who's sometimes completely off stage or sitting at a table just listening or taking notes or and maybe helping one student where so now that's not a fully cohesive experience. The other thing that tends to happen is we have the main teacher, the core teacher, and then the co-teacher just helps when they can or when they need to. So we're not fully executing all the human capacity that we have in the classroom. So one of the things I would argue is that human capacity is one of the most scarce resources in education. I think you'd probably agree with that, and most administrators would agree with that. Hiring is harder than it's ever been. Getting adults in the building is harder than it's ever been. So if I'm going to make the argument that we want to put two adults in a classroom, we better be maximizing the efficiency and the effectiveness of that team so that every student can get the benefit of having two adults in the room. So there's a lot of pieces to this. Some of the pieces we've already talked about, right? Like actual co-teaching, collaborative strategies, co-planning to co-serve. All of that is fantastic. But then the conversation sort of evolved into the idea of, is the instruction that's in place in the classroom even conducive to a co-teaching model, right? And I think that really moved the conversation to a more instructional one, if I do say myself.
Yeah, we talked to, I mean, it moved into scheduling and interventions. We talked about the tier one process going into tier two and tier three. We talked about just as far as the interventions that were being provided. I mean, I don't know what direction you want to go in, Chad, but I feel like that was kind of the next pieces that were discussed.
Right. So if we want to maximize, let's talk about maximizing adult capacity through an instructional lens, because I actually think that's what the conversation was really about. Because the
Mm-hmm.
truth is, whether we're co teaching or teaching as a single adult in a room, if the instruction's not designed to facilitate learning and provide productive struggle and keep kids in their zone of proximal development with a learning progression and mastery in mind, we're going to fail on either front, right? So if we look at our instruction and the only job is to cover material or convey information from our mouths to their ears or notes, the board to their notes, or however you want to say that, if we look at more like only direct instruction, only lecture, only notes, there's no fix for additional growth there. There's no place in that equation, right, to improve student outcomes. There are practices you can do to improve behavior and management and in the flow of a lesson, right? Properly plan and align it to standards. But like, there's no room for another adult in that equation. There's also no room for high impact intervention or small group work or productive struggle or collaborative learning or social emotional space because it's completely adult led. So to me, we have to ask the question, not are we good or bad at co-teaching, but is our instruction designed to support the idea of co-teaching? Is our instruction maximized at tier one, if we're talking about RTI, or is our core instruction designed to improve learning outcomes for all students? And that's really where the conversation led into everything from, well, how are we doing the small groups? Do we even know what we're assessing, right? And this was a huge conversation because many times we're not even looking at the standards. We're going, we need to cover multiplication because I always cover multiplication. But if we haven't unpacked the standards and have clear objectives that we're trying to reach, we have nothing to measure against. So what tends to happen is we measure everything all the time and learn nothing from that data. So now we can't differentiate, we can't do anything with it because it's just this giant mess buffet of information that we don't even know what to do with. Versus a very purposeful instruction, practice, and active learning model with then a clear assessment to whether they met what was asked in the standard of the objective. That's really when you can now go, who do we need to pull for small group? How can we break this group up? How can we modify instruction? But to be clear, co-teaching or not, if you're not having a learning environment that's conducive to any of those things because you're still just thinking you have to deliver content as your primary job, your system's broken and neither is going to work.
Yeah. So Chad, let's talk about the teaching piece because it sounded like in the admin's experience, a lot of teachers didn't understand standards, how to prioritize them. I know someone had talked about an initiative that was going on with co-teaching specifically, and they were talking about how it's pretzelized in the sense that they were just kind of tangling it so much that it turned into something that you didn't even recognize from what it was the inception of it. So, for the learning piece and training the teachers, specifically with the co-teaching model, do you want to talk through some of the things that were discussed today?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think this ties in very well with the conversations we have with administrators on a daily basis. So if I get a call from a principal or a school or a district and they're like, we need help. Well, I don't know what we need help on, but we need help. That's all I know, which sometimes is just the case. The first place I always start is, do your teachers understand what they're supposed to be teaching, which is what the standards are for? They're statements written by the state or the national kind of board of education that are supposed to outline what we're supposed to cover. Now, a lot of times we see standards as topics, right? We go multiplication, photosynthesis, cells and organelles, if you're in a science class or like whatever it is. And we stop right there. As teachers, we go, cool, we just need to cover that stuff and like, we're good. But many, many times the standard's asking us to dive deeper than we usually go. So if I just have students memorize cells and organelles, the standard might be asking them to compare and contrast the function of organelles or be able to compare and contrast different types of cells and their organelles and function. Sorry, my science teacher's showing a little bit here. But regardless of the standard, if we're teaching at a low depth and complexity, but the standard's asking for a high depth and complexity, we're never reaching the standard. This is actually what happens when a teacher has really high marks and grades in their classroom, but their state test scores are all below proficient, or a large percentage tend to be. It means you're teaching and assessing below the level of the expected standard that you're supposed to be teaching. So that's actually one of the reasons why we use depth of knowledge and DOK as a first step for almost any school we work with. It gives a lens for teachers to understand what mental steps or processes or thinking is required to complete the given task, standard, or learning objective. Because once we know that, we can then do alignment and we can go, here's the level I need them thinking at. Here's the level I need to teach at. Here's the level I need to assess at. And the whole lesson might not be there, but we need to make sure we at least get there at some point in the learning cycle. So we didn't go through all this in the mastermind, but I think a lot of this was at the crux of what was being talked about. Just a core understanding of what are we supposed to teach in the first place. Because if you don't have that foundation in your teaching staff right now and that's broken, everything that follows from a planning perspective will also be broken. Your lesson and instructional design will be broken. Your grading will be broken. Your assessment design and formative and summative assessments will be broken, which means all your data and intervention being driven by all of those other things are also going to be broken. So we have to make sure that the foundation's built first. And I think sometimes you want to skip to the fun stuff. We want to skip to like the project design or the even like the stuff that reaches the students the fastest. And I actually just had an experience with a school where we had been working with them on this foundational work for quite some time. And there was actually some frustration on the part of the staff because they were like, this is all fine. We get it. But like, I need this to like impact my classroom tomorrow. Like they weren't feeling it because it was all behind the curtain. Well, the next time we worked with them, we focused on clear assessments that they were going to hand to students. And it was amazing to me seeing the light bulbs kind of turn on the staff. And they were like, this is really easy because I've already unpacked all my standards. I already know my depth of knowledge. I already have clear learning objectives and learning progressions and rubrics for my standards. So now making the assessments and knowing that they're good assessments becomes super easy and clear. So it was almost like they had to go through the gritty work, like the nuts and bolts first, to make the other work more meaningful. But once they got there, they were like, okay, I see what you did there.
Oh, totally. It's all that behind the scenes, like any athlete too, right? You change your diet,
Yeah.
you start doing the workouts, you start lifting, and then you're
It's the
like, well,
stuff
why am
no
I
one
doing all
sees.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, no one sees it, right? And then you get out to the game day, and then your performance is better, and you're like, oh, that's shocking, but no, it's not because
That's a
you put
great
all the other.
analogy
Yeah,
because no one wants to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. every morning. No one
no.
wants to eat like a bird or whatever, however you're eating to do your, like, no one wants to do this. But that's the stuff that gets you the result when everyone's watching, right? Like, that's the stuff that gets you whatever your goal is when you start on that race line or when you show up in that weight room, like whatever the goal is, right? Or when you step on that scale or whatever the fitness goal is. I actually think that's an amazing metaphor, right? I think a lot of the most meaningful work teachers do are the stuff that no one sees. But if
Right.
they're ignoring some of that work because no one sees it, it tends to show up where people do see it.
Yep, for sure. I just want to mention real quick that there is a course on teachbetter.com that you can get for co-teaching specifically. So if this is an initiative that you've got on your district or on your campus that potentially you need some additional training on, definitely head over there. That's a great resource the Teach Better team has for you. I've been throwing up the links. So every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., we have this admin mastermind where we're getting together, just really collaborating together to work through different problems that are going on the campus. And it's been extremely organic. I barely have to say too much at the beginning this year, which
It's
is
a great
awesome.
group. Yeah.
Yeah. So head over to teachbetter.com/mastermind. When you go there, you can sign up. It'll send you every week the link to get on. And then, of course, we have a Facebook link that you'll get also with that sign up, where it's a community that continues to support each other throughout the week. So, yes, we come together on Tuesdays, but it shouldn't end there. And it's not the end all be all for this group. We want to make sure that we're there for you and everyone has access to each other throughout the week because we know problems arise all the time, right? So I know this week's going to be pretty crazy too because of Halloween jumping in this week. So if you need support, of course, Chad, myself, and the Teach Better team is here for you. So please reach out. Let us know how we can support you. And once again, thank you all for that attended this Tuesday morning. It was fantastic to see everyone. And yeah, any last words, Chad?
No, every adult, every student, every day. Let's go. Get out there.
Love it.